Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, we're taking an international dimension with this one, but we're talking about corruption, so you can expect that the country Nigeria will be ably represented. Guys, I bring you this top 10 most corrupt leaders that ever lived. So you can see now why I said the country Nigeria will be represented. A lot of people will be of the view actually that the whole list should be Nigerian leaders, but nevertheless, the headline again, top 10 most corrupt leaders that ever lived. So now let's now see who exactly they are. Corrupt leaders are found around the globe in all nations of the world, including America, Africa, Asia, and Europe. All are guilty of corruption, but these few mentioned below are exceptionally placed on the top 10 list for a special reason, which you are about to discover. These corrupt leaders are found guilty of acts of corruption, bribery, extortion, money laundering, looting, embezzlement of public funds, abuse of democracy or human rights, electoral crimes, and fraud. Here are the top 10 most corrupt leaders of all time. So now let's now meet them one by one. Number 10 is Arnoldo Aliman. Arnoldo Aliman, President of Nicaragua, 1997 to 2002. Arnoldo Aliman is the name of the chap. So now let's now meet him a little bit. He was the 81st president of the Central American nation and ruled for 5 years. Despite the poor state of his country, Arnoldo Aliman looted millions of dollars and was arrested shortly after his tenure in office on corruption charges involving 100 million of state-owned funds, according to the BBC. Using shell companies and fraudulent investment accounts in Panama and the United States, Aliman was able to launder the nation's funds, which he also spent on the purchase of high-value assets, including real estate and certificates of deposit. Along with some members of his family and other former ministers, he was convicted of money laundering, fraud, embezzlement, and electoral crimes in 2003 and sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. However, Aliman was secretly released in January 2009 when a controversial court ruling overturned his corruption charges and set him free. His release is said to have been influenced by a secret power-sharing arrangement with the country's current president, Daniel Ortega. Meanwhile, the only asset recovered so far from the ex-president was the forfeiture and reparation of approximately $2.7 million of Aliman's assets to the Nicaraguan government. So this happened in 2004, the recovery of the $2.7 million that is, and this happened via the United States. So out of the hundreds of millions of dollars that this guy looted, only $2.7 million was recovered, and he has since, of course, been released from prison via some dodgy dealings with the current incumbent. So we go on to the next candidate. It's a Pavlo Lazarenko, Prime Minister of Ukraine, 1996 to 1997. So Pavlo Lazarenko, Prime Minister of the Ukraine, is the next one up. So now let's see how his crime sheet reads. The former and fifth Prime Minister of Ukraine allegedly embezzled between $114 to $200 million in his first year in office. This was unveiled in an official count by the United Nations, showing that $200 million was siphoned by Pavlo Lazarenko, $500,000 each day. So that's $500,000 each day that this guy stole. How does that work out though? Apparently, allegedly $500,000 each day, 365 days in a year, and he stole approximately $200 million in 1 year. So roughly $500,000 each day. He funneled the funds through various bank accounts in Poland, Switzerland, and Antigua, and laundered some of the cash through a shell company in the United States used to purchase various properties. Lazarenko was detained by Swiss authorities in 2008 but released on $3 million surety. However, when the Swiss government denied him all his immunity, he fled to the United States, where he was again arrested for improper entry and was subsequently indicted on 53 counts of conspiracy, money laundering, wire fraud, and interstate transportation of stolen property, sentenced to 8 years imprisonment in December 2009 by a California court with a fine of over $9 million and forfeiture of 22.8 worth of assets. So I'm assuming that is $22.8 million. Lazarenko never completed his jail term. He was released from the United States federal prison in November 2012, and so far the Ukraine government is still recovering some of the stolen money left in Liechtenstein, amount unspecified, Antigua and Barbuda, $87.1 million, the United States, $271 million, Guernsey, $150 million, Lithuania, $29 million, and Switzerland, $5.4 million. So this guy just went on a jolly. So the next one up, Alberto Fujimori. Alberto Fujimori is the next one up, and he was the president of Peru. Never mind his Japanese sounding name. So Alberto Fujimori, president of Peru from 1990 to the year 2000. So now let's now see what the Japanese guy called Alberto got up to in Peru. Described as an authoritarian strongman and son of a Japanese immigrant, Alberto Fujimori, who was the 45th president of Peru, ruled the nation for 10 years, though he was credited for many good deeds, such as crushing uprising insurgencies and rescuing the country from economic collapse. He allegedly looted over $600 million in public funds. When a bribery scandal broke out in 2001 during his third term, Fujimori tried to resign via fax but was rejected by the country's Congress, who insisted he must be removed by impeachment. After 4 years in exile, he was arrested in 2005 on his way to Chile and extradited back to Peru to face an historical trial and was given a total prison term of 21 years on numerous charges. So far, no assets directly linked to Fujimori has been recovered, so no money is recovered from him. So now we're getting to the third world territory now, and the next one up is Jean-Claude de Valle. So Jean-Claude de Valle, a name that resonates with a lot of people, president of Haiti, 1971 to 1986. So now let's now see what Jean-Claude got up to. In his 15 years reign, ex-president of Haiti, Jean-Claude de Valle, and his cronies allegedly amassed between $300 million and $800 million, placing him at number 7 on the list of most corrupt leaders. De Valle inherited Peru's presidency aged 19 after the death of his father, Francis Papadoc de Valle. The country is known as one of the poorest, yet the U.S. Commerce Department reported that 64% of the government's revenue had been misappropriated. During his regime, blood bought from Haiti's donors for $5 a pint were sold to Americans for $35 a pint, including millions funneled through the sale of narcotics and body parts. He was made president for life in 1985 after a referendum was supported by 99.9% of the population, but the Valle was ousted by an uprising in 1986 and he fled to France, where he stayed on self-imposed exile for 25 years. The deserter was promptly arrested when he suddenly returned in 2011 and charged with corruption and embezzlement. He pleaded not guilty, but the case never continued because he died of a heart attack in October 2014 at age 63. Assets recovered include a case being appealed in Switzerland of $6.5 million and the Valle's assets held in the name of the foundation Brioli. I hope I pronounced that right. So next up, Slobodan Milosevic. Slobodan Milosevic, president of Serbia/Yugoslavia from 1989 to 2000. So now let's now see Slobodan, a name that we're all familiar with. In his 11 years as president of Serbia, 1990 to 1997, then president of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, best known for his role in the Yugoslavia War, where he presided over the mayhem and mass murder in Kosovo, Croatia, and Bosnia in the 1990s. During his reign, Milosevic allegedly embezzled more than $1 billion, and as reported by The Guardian in 2001, Yugoslavia's central bank speculated that as much as $4 billion had been taken. Insiders and his close relatives were believed to have laundered hundreds of millions of dollars through dozens of Cypriot front companies, with the trail pointing to Switzerland, Greece, France, Germany, Italy, Lebanon, Israel, Russia, China, Britain, Liechtenstein, and South Africa. Marked as one of the most corrupt leaders in the world, Milosevic never lived through his court trial after he was charged with embezzlement. He was also indicted by ICTY for war crimes and crime against humanity. After he died of a heart attack in March 2006, there was no asset recovery on record despite the amount allegedly stolen. So next up, Zine Abidine Ben Ali is the next character that we're contending with. Zine Abidine Ben Ali. And where is he from? Well, he was the former president of Tunisia, 1987 to 2011. So now let's now see what his rap sheet looks like. Ben Ali became Tunisia's second president in November 1987 after he ousted President Habib Bourguiba in a bloodless coup and went ahead to rule the African country for 23 years straight, a time he allegedly embezzled between $1 billion to $2.6 billion, marking him as number 5 on the list of the most corrupt leaders in the world. Meanwhile, under his administration, the country recorded 5% growth in GDP, despite his efforts in halving the country's poverty rate from 7.4% in 1990 to an estimated 3.8% in 2005. There was a high rate of unemployment, disenfranchised rural and urban poor, and continued repression. This led to increasing unrest, and one bizarre case was that of a 26-year-old who set himself ablaze after local police harassed him. The incident provoked a mass protest, forcing Ben Ali and his wife to flee the country to seek asylum in Saudi Arabia, the same city Idi Amin of Uganda lived in exile before his death in 2003, where they currently live. So they're still currently living there. An investigation into Ben Ali's wealth resulted in the new government confiscating his assets and that of 114 members of his clan, including 550 properties, 48 boats, 40 share portfolios, 367 bank accounts, and over 400 enterprises, all valued at $13 billion, reported to be more than a quarter of Tunisia's 2011 GDP. Ben Ali and his wife were convicted in a Tunisia court in absentia and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Charges against them include theft and unlawful possession of cash and jewelry. His wife, Lilia Trabulsi, allegedly fled the country with over 1.5 tons of gold valued at $50 million. So far, funds totaling $68.8 million have been returned, $28.8 million from Lebanon being the proceeds from a bank account held in the name of Ben Ali's wife, and $40 million from Switzerland. So now we hit home territory with number 4, Sani Abacha, President of Nigeria, 1993 to 1998. So we're getting to the top of the list. Abacha was Nigeria's 7th military ruler, as well as the first Nigerian soldier to make full general without missing a single rank. Described as a serial coup d'etat instigator, Abacha led the country's 9th military coup that overthrew the transitional government of Chief Ernest Shonekan in August 1993. Described as a serial coup instigator, he ruled the country for 5 years and allegedly embezzled as much as $2 billion to $5 billion whilst in office. Despite promising a return to democracy, his actions were autocratic. The court and the press were all under his control, as well as the military. An armed force of between 2,000 to 3,000 men guarded the presidential villa, hence political activities were banned. Despite his anti-democratic reign, Abacha's years as a military president was described as a miracle. External debt was a record low, from $36 billion to $27 billion. Foreign exchange reserve increased from $494 million to $9.6 billion, and inflation was slashed from 54% to 8.5%. Sani Abacha died in Abuja of a suspected heart attack in June 1998, notably 3 months after Pope John II visited Nigeria for beatification of Cyprian Michael Iweni Tansi. Return of the looted assets stashed in foreign banks is marked as the most successful, unlike other corrupt leaders. Till date, over $2.5 billion has been returned from Switzerland and the United States. More cases are still pending in Bahamas, Ireland, United Kingdom, and the United States. So that is Abacha for you. So still on the African theme, Mobutu Seko is who we're landing on next at number 3. Mobutu Seko, President of Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. So Zaire, of course, changed its name since. He ruled that country from 1965 to 1997. Mobutu Seko can be described as Africa's most corrupt leader, notoriously known for instigating a coup, one of which placed him as Congo's commander-in-chief of the armed forces after he ousted the country's first democratically elected leader, Patrice Lumumba, during the 1960 Congo crisis. 5 years later, he led the second coup that installed him as the country's president. During his 32 years in office, he allegedly embezzled over $4 to $5 billion, and his negligent administration drowned the country into hyperinflation, a large external debt, and massive currency devaluation. Seko's excesses were so legendary that he paid the world-renowned chef Gaston Lanotre to personally deliver his birthday cake from Paris, encouraged systemic corruption, hosted the heavyweight world championship title fight between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman in Kinshasa in October 1974, known as the Rumble in the Jungle. Each fighter was paid $5 million for their appearance. Already terminally ill, he finally relinquished power in May 1996 during an uprising against his administration and fled to Togo, then to Morocco, where he died from a prostate cancer in 1997. None of his assets stashed in foreign banks was ever returned to Congo. The $6.68 million worth of Mobutu's assets released by Switzerland in 2009 was handed back to his family due to lack of cooperation by DRC government, whose deputy prime minister was one of Mobutu's sons. So there you have it. No changes in Zaire or Congo. They can change their name, but nothing else seems to have changed there. So now we're getting to the final straight, and here we are on number 2. Ferdinand Marcos is who we are talking about, president of the Philippines, 1965 to 1986. So now let's now see how Marcos played it out. Labeled as one of the world's most corrupt leaders, Marcos was elected the 10th president of the Philippines in 1965 and ruled the country for 21 years. In his years in office, he allegedly embezzled between $5 to $10 billion accumulated through 6 channels. So these are the 6 channels of corruption according to the Marcos template. So the first channel, the takeover of large private enterprises. So the second one, creation of state-owned monopolies in key sectors of the economy. The third one, awarding of government loans to private individuals acting as front for him or his associates. Number 4, directly raiding the country's treasury and other government financial institutions. Number 5, kickbacks and commissions from firms working in the Philippines. And finally, number 6, skimming of foreign aid and other forms of international assistance. So this is how he played it during his tenure. The proceeds were reportedly laundered through shell corporations, then invested in real estate within the United States, or deposited into various domestic and offshore banking institutions using a mixture of pseudonyms, numbered accounts, and code names. After Marcos went into exile, a raid at the Malacañang Palace in Manila exposed the family's lavish lifestyle. An inventory of assets discovered includes over 1,000 pair of shoes belonging to the First Lady, 888 handbags, 71 pairs of sunglasses, and 65 parasols. A quasi-judicial agency, PCGG, established by the government of the Philippines in 1986 to recover the ill-gotten wealth accumulated during the Marcos regime, has so far managed to recover nearly $3.6 billion in assets, including $688 million released by the Switzerland government in 2004. So the legend is actually true. All of this laundered money from all over the world always ends up in Switzerland. So now we hit the number 1 spot, and who occupies that position? Well, that position is occupied by Mohamed Suharto. Mohamed Suharto is the inglorious winner of this top 10 chart. Mohamed Suharto, president of Indonesia, 1967 to 1998. He ruled Indonesia for 31 years. Suharto tops the list of most corrupt leaders of all time with an amassed fortune of between $15 billion to $35 billion. Mohamed Suharto became Indonesia's second president after a failed left-wing coup. During his tenure, the country enjoyed economic growth, and a strong anti-communist stance won him economic and diplomatic support from the West. The country's GNP averaged at 6.7% per annum, with GDP increasing from $806 to $4,114 per capita, bringing poverty rate down to 11% in 1997. Whilst his achievement earned him a gold medal from FAO, there was a rapid expansion of what the country dubbed KKN. So that's Korupski, so that's for corruption, Kolusi, that's collusion, and nepotism, and that is nepotism. So according to Robert Elsin, Suharto's biographer, corruption was a well-managed franchise like McDonald's or Subway. Suharto died in 2007 during several court trials with charges including misusing $550 million from 7 charities he controlled whilst president, and $1.5 billion civil lawsuits filed against him. So as for asset recovery, the Indonesian government in 2010 successfully brought a private civil action against the Suharto family for the recovery of $307.4 million. So that is Suharto for you, and he caps it all off. So only one Nigerian, of course, on that list, and it's always the name Abacha. But then, of course, a lot of Nigerians will tell you that Abacha, of course, is not by any distance the most corrupt Nigerian leader. The most corrupt Nigerian leader, as everyone knows, is of course Babangida, but as ever the Maradona that he is, he has again successfully evaded attention and the authorities. Conversations in the comment section, the top 10 list of the most corrupt leaders in the world. What do you make of the list? Is there somebody missing from that list that you feel should be on it? Or is there somebody on it that you feel should not be? So whatever your thoughts are, come share them with me in the comment section. But before you come share thoughts, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. The bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Click on that as well. Click on the like button as well, because that helps with the YouTube algorithm. Once you've done the clickings, come join me in the comment section. Come, let's talk about this top 10 list and your experiences of corruption in whatever society that you belong to. So I'll leave you here. Carry this conversation on with you in the comment section, but here I say peace.